Welcome to the Fantasy NASCAR podcast brought to you by racefortheprize.com. Let's get ready for Iowa Xfinity Series. But first, if you go to my website, you can get access to the Fantasy NASCAR Spreadsheet. Just Venmo, PayPal, Cash App a couple dollars my way, and I'll share the sheets with you. Let's do it. It'd be a Father's Day gift for me. I really appreciate it, guys, and I appreciate you watching the channel, liking, subscribing, sharing, recruiting others. What are we doing for Iowa? Yes, they have been to Iowa before, but I'm not going to lean that heavily on a 2019 races or 2018 races. And they've also repaved the track. If you want to, it's in the sheet. You can look and see, obviously, Justin Allgaier, the Midwesterner, runs pretty well here. We've seen all the top names from Bella to Keselowski all the way back to Stenhouse run well in this kind of outlier event because they never run in the Cup Series. Anyway, I'm not really crazy about Iowa data. I suppose the tracks that I would lean on the most going into this race are Phoenix and Richmond, mainly Richmond because Iowa was modeled by Rusty Wallace after Richmond. Very comparable. So if we take Richmond results, we can probably superimpose those over. And if you remember the Richmond race, check out the podcast recap I have at my channel. Or quickly, it was pretty green. There was a not pit issue, but there was a caution early in stage 3. You had to decide if you wanted to take tires or not. And then the race ran to completion, so the guys that stayed out ultimately faded, and the guys that took tires went ahead, but really wasn't too much of a surprise. Eric Almirola, Chandler Smith had the best cars anyway, and then you had these place differential plays come through. And I would see a similar play working out where we're going to spend up 2 hogs or dominators in this race, and then we're going to try to maximize place differential and finishing position from a point per dollar perspective. And then more than likely, given that these drivers are very expensive, we are going to have to go down to the very cheap range in our Lemons class. We may not get the driver Logan Bearden was in the optimal lineup at Richmond. He just maximized point per dollar wise. He's the cheapest guy. They got the most points. And I would expect us to be in a similar situation if we're going to spend up for 2 drivers that are going to run fast laps and lead laps. So where we stand right now, and again, I think practice and lap by lap data is going to be the big thing that we are going to lean on. We have a 50-minute practice session. They may even get 2 sets of tires. So, hey, it's a great week to go to racefortheprize.com and get that lap by lap practice data, because there just isn't much else out there. And you can look on lap averages and other free resources, and that's fine. But if you want to see every single lap, Venmo, PayPal, Cash App, it's in the description below. Send it my way. Now I'll send you sheets. And then you'll have a little bit of your edge on Saturday and on Father's Day for the Cup Series race. Allgaier, Nemechek, Chandler Smith, Custer, those would be my clear early favorites. Maybe one of these guys sneaks in. I'm not going to completely rule them out because of practice. The drivers below $10,000, we'll see. Maybe they unload fast, they qualify really well, and something happens. But where we stand early in the week, Chandler Smith, obviously, based on what he has done even in the Truck Series, but this year at Phoenix and at Richmond, very fast. JGR, very fast. Now, I know he hasn't really been scoring a lot of points lately, but again, we've been running at a lot of road courses. And before that, intermediate tracks, which were dominated by Allgaier. Allgaier definitely on the board. Chandler definitely on the board. Nemechek with Tyler Allen, who set up for Eric Almirola, who won the Richmond race. And Tyler Allen's done a very good job of setting up that all-star JGR Toyota this year. I think you can believe in him, although he doesn't rank as well right now, but that's because of a poor Darlington race. But overall, these have been your top 4 drivers on the board, and they should be. Track sets up for them. And Cole Custer has run well at Iowa in the past. He led laps at Phoenix. I know sometimes it's tough to roster the guy, but he's had strong Iowa races, obviously. And he's in a position right now where he does need to prove himself. He does need to go. He probably is going to stick around and find another team, but he really can't screw up. He can't run poorly. We'll see. I feel like there might be a little more aggressiveness from Cole Custer like we saw out of him during his near championship season where he's battling with Bell and Reddick. and that crew. But no one's going to disagree there. Now, when we go down to the second tier, it's going to be hard to afford these drivers if we are spending up for an Allgaier, Nemechek, Smith, and Custer. Just the way that it is. If we're going to really try to lean towards the bottom and try to get place differential in the double digits and getting around a top 5 finish. So let's just assume we can't afford Mayer and Hill and Creed and Love and may not even want those drivers, and they may not even be in a position to score. You got Brett Moffitt in an interesting spot. Although the 9,000 may be a little too expensive, he does have wins at Iowa in 2018 and 2019 in the Truck Series. Again, I don't really want to lean on that kind of data that much. Although technically he didn't win the 2019 race. That was won by Ross Chastain, but Chastain got DQ'd. I think Chastain led 149 of like 150 laps. So again, Chastain, yeah, he's got success at Iowa too, but 5 years ago at Iowa, are we really doing that? Probably not. One thing I would say about Chastain is Gosselin had really fast cars at Richmond. If you remember with Kyle Weatherman, they practiced great, they qualified great, and so it is very possible that Gosselin's going to bring in some pretty good cars again, an 8,800. But again, if he qualifies too close to the front, we really need place differential. We need savings. That might take these guys off the board, but they are drivers that slightly cheaper than them, and I think have just as much upside. Chastain a little bit of a push early in the week, but we'll see what he unloads with in practice. Get some savings on Sammy, who then, I'm kind of excited about him and his career. He is a late model short track racer coming through the system. Could put something together. You get a little bit of a discount on AJ Allmendinger at 8,300. Whereas most weeks we're not really interested in rostering him at 9,000. But once he gets a little bit cheaper, the finishing position points they provides and the slight amount of place differential become a little bit more attractive. But when he's up in the 9,000s, we know he's not necessarily a top 5 driver, and usually qualifying towards the front with a fast, trimmed out Kaulig car. We'll see what happens. And maybe Kaulig could struggle being a team that hasn't really got a huge notebook on Iowa. But again, I don't know who has a huge notebook at Iowa. They were around then. What was it? Blake Cook was driving for them back then. So, they have some notes, but not really. Herbst to 8,100 really becomes very appealing. We know it's a top 10 car. Very solid, very safe. Saves us money. But if he qualifies too close to the front, then he comes out of that equation. Again, we're trying to save enough money, maximize finishing and place differential points, along with those expensive guys that we're paying up for. Corey Heim had a really good Richmond race. Led laps, ran fast laps. His driver rating was 3rd best, finishes 4th. So if there is some correlation or these tracks are comparable, you would expect that Sam Hunt car to be very fast again. And Corey Heim has been very impressive in all the series that he's running in. Obviously in the Truck Series, he's your championship favorite. But he even looked good in the Cup car. And he's looked good in the Xfinity car. 8,000. You probably like him a lot more than you do Riley Herbst, to be quite honest. And if we're looking point per dollar wise, I know it is a Sam Hunt car, but the Sam Hunt cars have been very capable this season and in the past. When we have seen John Hunter Nemechek had really good races in Sam Hunt cars at Richmond and similar short tracks. The Sam Hunt team's come a long way. Hate thinking about Brandon Jones, but at the price, he does have some history. He has run well at Phoenix in the past. He wrecked at Richmond. That's Brandon Jones for you. You know the story. Maybe people are going to be off Brandon Jones lately because he has been bad, but it's been road courses, and it's what you would expect. But heading into those road courses, he's actually having some decent runs. He's definitely going to be at the board at that price. Parker Kligerman, yeah, as well. Borderline top 10 driver. He's got to get some place differential. Sure, he lacks experience, but I don't think Iowa experience is really going to matter in this race. 7,500 for a top 10 driver, that can work. And since he is so cheap, we then can lower our expectations on place differential. I don't think we're going to guarantee we're going to get these guys starting absolutely in the back like we did at Richmond, where you had Josh Williams way in the back, and you had Bubba Paul way in the back, and Taylor Gray and a JGR car way in the back. Sure, if we get that Parker Kligerman way in the back, that's fine. But if Parker Kligerman can only get about 5 place differential points in the top 10, that might be enough to work, given that we are spending up at the top. Sieg as well is in that conversation. It's been about a top 15 driver. Only $100 cheaper than Kligerman, and I think a little less consistent, a little less upside, probably a little more risk of mechanical failures and issues. So you will likely get lower ownership because he is not significantly cheaper than Kligerman. Kligerman is the guy that I would go to, probably go to Jones first. Sieg at $400 cheaper becomes more appealing, but he's not. That's where he is. And price is a little tricky, but he is having a good season. SVG just going to be out there. Matt DiBenedetto is overpriced at $7,000. Had a decent Richmond race, but this is like an 18th car at best. And I think that is really pushing it, especially if you go over kind of what this team is growing. Now they had to go to the West Coast, do all these road course trips, races, and now they're going to go back to Iowa. It's quite a challenge. I mean, this is not a full-fledged Sieg team. It's kind of allied with Sieg. The resources are low, and this might be a time in the season where they're going to struggle to make sure that they just keep them going and building their notebook. And at $7,000, it's just way too much. You're paying for brand name. Parker Retzlaff won the pole at Richmond, very fast, really good. So when we look at this Lemons class, although I don't really think Parker Retzlaff is in the Lemons class, he really isn't. When we look at the backpack, he is top. If we're looking more mid-pack and creating a tier with Sieg and Retzlaff, Ryan, yeah, and I actually like Retzlaff better. Again, won the pole at Richmond, ran well all day, didn't get the finish they deserve because, as I mentioned at that Richmond race, early caution in stage 3. You had to decide, take your tires or stay out and save a set. He saved a set. He faded. Didn't get to finish, but ran well. 13th. Finishes 16th. I think he could have been more capable of a top 10. Jordan Anderson clearly had speed. I would expect that they'll have some speed there. And, Retzlaff, good. Williams. Good Richmond race. Grinds through, has slowly gotten better. We remember at the beginning of the season, they struggled. He struggled, but I think he will be fine. Josh Williams, 6,700. Could clearly win the Lemons class. I wouldn't really put a colored car again in the Lemons class, but he can move forward. Same can be said of Daniel Dye. I don't think I see too much of a difference between Josh Williams and Daniel Dye, to be quite honest with you. Maybe that's blasphemy to some of the Josh Williams truthers. Maybe that's blasphemy to the people that hate on Dye, seeing their rosters die, picking Dye in the Truck Series. He is a talented driver. He will improve. He's getting more reps. His future looks very good. Has it been a struggle at times in the past? Sure, it is for all drivers that aren't in the most elite equipment, although he's had some pretty good rides. But 6,600, you like the color car. You like his talent. If it were up to me right now, Williams and Dye, who's going to give me more place differential? I don't see much difference in where both of them can finish. Alfredo, 6,400 for Alfredo, who is around the 15th to 20th place driver in the Hour Motorsports car. Unfortunately, he often qualifies too close to the front. If I remember correctly, at Richmond, he had a mechanical failure, had mechanical issues all day. Again, he can get to the 15s, but he often starts there. And so it's tricky. But at 6,400, he doesn't completely fall off the board. We'll see. Burton, 15th to 20th place driver. I think just a smidge lower than Retzlaff. And if you can get the place differential, it's fine. He's usually running in that 15 to 20 range. 6,300, we can definitely go there. Again, we're looking for place differential. Going to be at the top of the Lemons class. Weatherman, as I mentioned, the Gosselin cars were really fast at Richmond. Unfortunately, they qualified way too close to the front. Look, his driver rating was 18th. Very solid, 6,200. And at this price tag, you can consider him despite starting a little closer to the front because he probably is going to start 20th or better. He may not be the most appealing because he can't maximize place differential, but he'll be there kind of near on the board. If we're just looking at who can win this class, he clearly is there. Clements, smidge slower. I would rather go with a Pool, save a little bit more. Pool's been a little bit more consistent, a little stronger, not by much. But, I mean, and we're looking at intermediate track races, and they may not be the best reference point. The one thing that could worry you is that the Tommy Joe Martin's cars were terrible at Richmond. You can see that 26th driver rating, which is pretty low for Brennan Poole, who typically is around 20-ish. And then you look at Ryan Ellis, he was terrible. They just did not have fast cars. So if they had trouble setting up for Richmond, there's a good chance that they could have trouble setting up for Iowa as well. If that is the case, then yeah, bump Clements up. And then drop Poole down. Obviously, not crazy about rostering Ryan Ellis at the moment. Kyle Sieg, price is creeping up a little bit. Around a 25th place driver. We're just looking for place differential. David Starr, interestingly enough, is finishing like 5 positions back. He's running 30th and finishing 25th in every race. So if he goes out there with that approach and we get him starting deep in the field, and we like it. Again, we've talked about this in previous podcasts. Some of these guys that aren't necessarily trying to even win the Lemons class. They're trying to finish races and keep it clean. And if we had a Logan Bearden, the optimal at Richmond, that could be the approach. We want a guy around 5,500 or lower, 5,600 or lower, starting in the back, not trying to race, not trying to even win the class. Just bring the thing home through attrition, maybe catch a break or two, and finish a little bit better than where they run, get a top 25, and let's go back to the East Coast. Is that where they're heading next? I can't even remember. What, New Hampshire? Yeah. Going out to, way out to the East Coast. Blaine Perkins, sometimes these tertiary and quaternary Sieg cars have mechanical failures. As I always say, I like Perkins at the short tracks, the short flatter tracks. I believe Richmond, he had a mechanical failure. Good races at Phoenix in the past. Check some of the boxes, but the mechanical failures are always lurking. And if we were looking for slow and steady and safe, then I like Star, but ultimately the decision is made by where they're going to start this race. We like to pretend that, oh, we evaluated Star, we evaluated Perkins, or we looked at Leland Honeyman, and we analyzed all of their lap-by-lap data, and we do, and we will, and we have a great understanding of where they can finish and run. But at the end of the day, the gun to your head is, where are they starting? You can love Star, but if he's starting 25th, it's a no-go. It's a black hole. It's a dwarf planet. I don't know where I'm going with that. It's where they start. The truth is. Now, outside of it, I don't like rostering Emmerling. I know it is a daughter car, but you can see the results. Not going there. Dawson Cram has finished better than where he runs. David Starlight. He's going to give you $1,000 savings. So if Dawson Cram is starting in the very back, and he has been more of a guy that's trying to just finish races, then I can get on board with rostering Dawson Cram. As ugly as that is, if I need the savings, $4,600 will really help me target those drivers at the top, get 2 hogs in my lineup, and also maybe chase some place differential from an elite driver. You could go to Ellis a little bit more. Again, I already mentioned the concerns with Tommy Joe Martin's cars. That could have just been a one-off. Gase, this is, his Iowa race. He is the Iowa guy. So if his car looks halfway decent in practice, maybe you play that narrative. But I also don't think I saw on the entry list Gase immediately releasing a car to the point that maybe he was still shopping this ride. And if that was the case, he wasn't planning on running it. If he wasn't planning on running it, then it's probably not the best ride. But again, it is his Iowa race. I don't know. Probably too much Gase talk. Honeyman's been fine. Obviously, the numbers check out pretty well. He's probably the most appealing down towards this range. Probably like him better than Perkins given the price. Star, maybe you pay a little bit more for just because of the way he's going to handle the race. The Honeyman's definitely on the board. Cram is on the board if he's at the very back. Wouldn't completely rule out Patrick Emmerling if he's in the very back. Any of these guys is in the very back, maybe you roster them. Just because you're trying to get savings. Again, Logan Bearden got into the optimal lineup. Ultimately, you guys are just going to finish the race. That's going to do it here on the Fantasy NASCAR podcast. You want access to the Fantasy NASCAR Spreadsheet, go to racefortheprize.com, Venmo, PayPal, Cash App. Like the video now, right now, do that. Subscribe to the channel right now, do that. Share, recruit, bring people to this beautiful, beautiful channel. You beautiful, beautiful people. I am truly blessed that you keep on checking this site out. Love you guys. Love you guys. Trip the light, fantastic.